Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Shauna Riley from the Scripps Howard Center at Northern Kentucky University, and welcome to tonight's lecture. Tonight's lecture is part of our 6 at 6 lecture series, which is in its 15th season. The lecture series is when we bring NKU faculty and guests into the community to do lectures of public interest, and we hope that you will find tonight's lecture and commentary of interest. So, some thank yous before we get started, and then I will turn it over to our panel. We want to thank Maria Jenkins from the Cincinnati Art Museum for helping us put this all together. We also want to thank the staff who's helping us with the sound tonight, Norse Media. They are broadcasting it to our folks at home. The folks at home have a Q&A feature where they can ask questions. They'll come to my phone, and I'll ask them for you. We also want to thank the Scripps Howard staff and our interns who are here tonight. They're the ones sending you all the emails. You're welcome. And with that, I'd like to introduce some of our panelists. Well, all of our panelists. First, I'd like to talk about our featured artist and panelist, Matt Albritton. I hope you had the time to see some of his work as we got here this night. There'll be some time to see that as well before you leave. And of course, there's some on the stage as well. Matt is a professor and the director of the School of the Arts at Northern Kentucky University. His academic and creative interests center on service learning and community engagement through documentary photography. His photographic projects have explored diverse themes such as the birthplace of US presidents, COVID-19 masks, the filling stations like we'll talk about tonight, and most recently, slave graveyards. Joining him on the panel is Michael Keating. He is a former Cincinnati Enquirer photojournalist. He is also a co-trustee of the Clyde and Day Trust, a charitable giving donation located here in Northern Kentucky. His work has exhibited from personal projects focusing on ruin and decay of cities throughout the United States. Catherine Gardette joins us from the Walnut Hills Historical Society. Catherine is a long-term member of the community and has been a member of the board there as well. And last but not least, our moderator for this evening is Arabeth Belasco. She is the curator of photography, prints, and media at the Cincinnati Museum Center. She believes that collections should be inclusive and uses her position and platform to advocate to collect, preserve, and make accessible the stories and history of diverse Cincinnati voices. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Matt Albritton to talk a little bit about some of the work we heard tonight, or saw tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me okay? An event like this doesn't happen without a whole bunch of people involved. So I just want to start with some thanks. I want to thank everybody here for digging out from the snow and single-digit temperatures and everything to come up here tonight, or those folks watching at home, I hope you're toasty warm. You're able to do that at home because of our friends from Norse Media, Chris Strobel and students over here. Thank you guys for coming in for this. I want to thank the Cincinnati Art Museum. Maria Jenkins and Dev both helped me unload some photos this afternoon. Thank you, Shauna, and the great folks over at the Scripps Howard Center. This is the 15th year of doing these lecture series, and I'm honored to be a part of it. I want to thank NKU, my professional home for the last 25 years, if somehow that's possible. But the support for research and creative work that really transforms lives and this region. NKU is at the forefront. And when I had an idea to take a little bit of time off to take pictures of a bunch of filling stations, NKU was there to support and make this work happen. And then finally, the folks I'm up here on stage with. This is a great group of people out doing great things in the world. And I hope it's going to be a great conversation. So thanks to everybody. One more round of applause for everybody that made this happen. So I'll start just a little bit and just talk about the project. How did it come to be? Why the heck would I drive around taking pictures of old gas stations. We can start a while ago in 1888 with Bertha Benz of the Mercedes-Benz company. Took the very first road trip, 60 miles in Germany, and filled up her car as it was along the way. In 1905, here in America, was the first real gas station in St. Louis. 1907 in Seattle, a couple of years later. They kind of vie back and forth for who was the first. But then 1913 in Pittsburgh was the first true, what I would call a filling station, service station, where not only you can fill your tank, but you could get your radiator filled up, you could get a little bit of service, maybe a cold drink, your windscreen wiped. So that really started in 1913 and grew into what I'm interested in here is this kind of community center. Eventually everybody had to stop and get gas, right? It's a very democratic place, a filling station. By 1991, there was, it's when we peaked here in this country with filling stations, 210,000 gas stations in 1991, everywhere, right? They've declined a little bit in recent years, so this year, 2026, is about 122,000 gas stations around. They don't look like the old filling stations anymore, right? What was responsible for that decline? Larger, more efficient stations, right? You can go to a Buc-ee's with 122 pumps, in and out quick, and get everything everybody in your car needs. And fewer independent stations. And that's kind of what this project is about, is the loss of those independent stations. I started the project, I was interested in filling stations. It started with stories of my dad talking about his very first job in Uncle Clip's filling station and all the things that he would do. He'd fill a radiator, you know, help folks out, people would stop for a cold drink, all of that. So that's early on in my memories. And then on early road trips, if Dad, sorry Dad, if you're watching, got lost or didn't quite know where he was on the way to being where we were going, what would we do? I'm gonna pull in this filling station and ask for directions, right? Why did you know the person at the filling station had the directions, right? Because the old filling station, it was a part of the community, right? The people that worked there, the people that went there. So that's kind of what started the project. It's just these kind of fond memories, you know. And I started making some pictures, put a proposal together, and was thrilled enough to be able to go kind of really bite into it. But I didn't really know what it was about until early on. One of the early filling stations that I found was called the Brooksville Here and There Stop and Go. And it's abandoned, all of these are abandoned. But I pulled up and I'm making some pictures. And basically, with all these places, I'm kind of trespassing, right? A little bit. So I stopped and, you know, by and by a guy pulls up and gets out and asks, "Can I help you?" Not in a way that made me think he wanted to help me. Right? A little bit suspicious, a little bit like, "Well, dude, what are you doing here? You don't look like, what's up?" And so that initial suspicion, you know, got a little nervous, of course. Here we are in rural Kentucky. But with a conversation, that suspicion melted into a real connection, right? Letting him know, and this happened again and again on this project. Same thing. "Can I help you?" Right? It's the way usually it started. Me getting a little bit nervous, but then this connection, talking. What am I interested in here? I'm interested in my own memories of these filling stations. I'm interested in that sense of community, this place where the community could come and share news and a frozen Coca-Cola. And I know it's a little bit nostalgic. It's tinged with that for sure. But that suspicion with that conversation melted into this connection, and we could talk about things we had in common. Didn't know the person at all before this encounter, You know, but I got to hear about the rise and fall of their family business. I got to hear about we got to share about the impacts of time. It affects all of us, right? We got to talk and learn from each other, you know, a little bit about the good old days. And again, I know it's nostalgic. Family tragedy, right? The impacts of things out of our control. That big filling station that went in down the street and put my mom and pop out of business, right? These are common things that connect us, that we have these experiences together. And the old filling station was a place where that happened. That's when I knew what this project was about, was encounters like that. And that's what I thought more and more about, driving all on these little small roads across Kentucky and Alabama, which is where I'm from. You know, so that's what I think about here. That's what the work is about. That's what I hope this panel can talk about, is more and more we've lost opportunities to genuinely connect with people that aren't like us, that don't think like us, right? We don't have to buy anything at a store anymore. Amazon will put it on your front porch. We don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore. Don't have to go to Kroger. Kroger will drop it on your front doorstep. We're even lost that opportunity to be around people that are maybe not exactly like us or think exactly like us. And what has, and this is not political, and none of this is, but what has replaced that is we could call the online, it's not a filling station, but you know, online groups where your own point of view about things is just reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And you don't encounter, there's no opportunity for connection. So that's what this work is about. As you look up, you know, the grid there, I was hoping to get about 20 filling stations when I started the project. By the end of about 5 months, I had 70. It turns out every little town had a filling station, right? It had that place for community to come together. So yeah, so that's what it's about. That's what, you know, all of these great people on stage here are leading efforts to, how do we fill in for the filling station, right? It turns out people are hungry for it, for places to connect. As you invest in places in downtown areas, in Cynthiana and Walnut Hills, if I'm not right, people come. People are hungry for it. And so that's what the conversation is about tonight. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, everyone. I'll echo the sentiments of Matt. Thanks for coming out tonight and having a fruitful discussion. I have prepared a few questions for all of our panelists, but please feel free to participate, jump in, share your thoughts and questions as the evening progresses. So Matt, I'm gonna start a question for you based on what you had just shared and talked about. So I know you touched a little bit on some of the surprises and things that you had encountered along the way, but what was something, like if you can explain a little bit more of your unexpected occurrences with somebody. I know when you mentioned how people are like, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you coming here? Being able to kind of melt those fears and those disconnects and just sharing a little bit more about that human experience and connection in those communities that you were a part of.
Absolutely. Well, my favorite experience, and what I want out of photography in general, is connection. And so when I'm standing in front of these buildings, I do connect to my thoughts and, you know, the time and things like that. But it is a treat to connect with people out there, right? And that happened several times on this. And that was always my favorite on this project. That was my, really just charged me up with these conversations and chance to connect. One was a downtown Augusta, Kentucky, at the old Needmore, just down the street from Mama and Papa's house, for my kids there, was a place that had been in business for a very long time. I mean, you could still see in the concrete where the old pumps were, the gravity pumps, where you would pump gas up into the top and it would trickle down. And it's at the crossroads of a couple of the streets, right up from Clopay, a big employer in town. You know, folks would stop there for a cold drink on their way home. So I'm out there photographing it. I remember going in there and you know, getting stuff when we were down in Augusta. So it hadn't been abandoned that long. But I'm photographing, and this old rattly pickup truck pulls up, and same thing. It's an older gentleman. He told me he was 82. Roll the window down. Can I help you? Yeah, hey sir, how you doing? You know, I'm just, do you know any stories about this place? You know, at first I'd be very nervous, but throughout the project I got a little more comfortable and just would ask, you know, tell me something cool about this place. You know, let's share these stories. And he had a lot of stories, and you know, talked about folks coming home from work and they stopped there for a cold beer, and that's where you'd share the news. That's where you would know, is the rain coming? You know, talk about farming and everything else. And then he went on and started talking about kind of bigger things. You know, kids today, you know, just don't understand the hard work and everything. And you know when things really changed for us in this country was when President, and I thought, oh, we're going to get into some politics here, but he didn't say the current president or the former president, when President Nixon took us off the gold standard and had a lot to say about the old gold standard. And I was like, yes, sir, yeah, okay. All right, you know, and then I'm on the way home like, the gold standard, right? But passionate, you know, and I love passion as well. And so that was very memorable and just was a lovely afternoon. You know, hearing stories about, he's like, oh yeah, people, you know, they'd have music in this tiny little place. You know, people would bring their guitars down, and people would come and hear music and have a drink together after work. Just, you know, and just, yeah, 18 cents a gallon was what he remembered gas was. I mean, he had a long memory, you know. So it was really just lovely and wonderful connection, and some pretty cool pictures too.
Great, thanks, Matt. So Catherine, I'm going to move over towards you. So Catherine, would you like to share anything about the work that you're doing at Walnut Hills before I get into your questions?
Certainly, thank you. So I want to welcome you all to Walnut Hills. Eden Park is in Walnut Hills. And we are, if you drive up Gilbert Avenue, it says a diverse neighborhood since 1800. And that's truly what we are, that we have been a welcoming place with many third places like the filling station where you can come together and you can have those conversations. And it's certainly what we continue to do as the city keeps developing and as development is coming into our community physically and changing. One thing that we won't get into, but I think it is important to say, is that affordable for whom? Gas stations even, affordable for whom? Who do we want to see in our circle that is quite near us? Only people that look like us? Only people in the economics with us? Or do we want that cross-section of all of the diversity that this city has to be our neighbors, developing our communities right along with us, having those hard conversations in those third spots?
That's great, because that actually segues nicely into my question for you, Catherine. So looking at all the different photographs that we've seen from Matt, and also we'll come to Michael and chat a little bit more about his work, with the themes of abandonment, decay, juxtaposed with connectivity and community revival, how do you think Walnut Hills fits into that overarching theme? And how do you think it has been resilient? And how do you think it will continue to do so in the future?
Raise your hand if you remember when Taft and McMillan were one way. That happened decades ago. And McMillan and Taft were vibrant business neighborhoods. And with the one-way streets, businesses closed because people don't like going back around the block. And within the city of Cincinnati, all of the neighborhoods in the community have the right to ask for projects that's supported by what's called Neighborhood Support Program funding. And so the community of Walnut Hills literally for 15 years, every year said we wanted the transportation department to do a study on converting those streets back to two-way. And for 14 years, we got no. But in those 14 years, we got data. And the data showed that our business district was going away, that the residents in our neighborhood were moving out. And so we went from being a community of 20,000 to 6,000. And when you have those numbers, then people go, oh, well, maybe we should consider that. And since we've gotten those two-way streets, we've had a top 25 cocktail bar, a top 25 dining restaurant. Our public library has been rebuilt, which was the first Carnegie Library in Cincinnati. When I talk about affordable for whom, we now truly have a full complement. You can buy $1 million homes in Walnut Hills proper, not East Walnut Hills. As well, there's still 30% AMI housing here. Our Kroger went away, our CVS went away, but we have new housing and new business that is on there. So the resilience comes from the residents being tenacious, because we are a community like many communities, not only in Cincinnati, but in northern Kentucky, that have longevity. And the residents who have that longevity are tenacious. And they're going to city council members, and they're going to county commissioners, and they're going to school board meetings, and they're talking about why it's important to have right people in right spots in our community.
That's great. Thank you, Catherine. And that actually jumps nicely to you, Michael. So, Michael, would you like to share a little bit about your work before I ask your question?
Sure. But I want to say that was very, very impressive about the one-way streets. And that over time and over persistence and finding the data, because everybody responds to data. You know, there's show me the money, but there's show me the data. And so it does prove that you can get things done. So that is just, wow, I did not know that. So now I do. So that's pretty cool. I was a photographer for the Inquirer, and I had an interest in photography, obviously. And the opportunity about 5-6 years ago now, because we'll be on our 6th class, I was able to team up with a guy who was the founder of Boyd Station. What we do is that we provide stipend to 2 and sometimes 3 photographers, and also a writer under the funding method that comes from the Mary Withers writing workshop, and I think she was a poet laureate in the state of Kentucky at some point, and part of Harrison County. Cynthiana is where Boyd Station, I guess for the best purposes to describe where it is, it's in Cynthiana, Kentucky. It's out in a sort of a outer region, but you know, it's sort of one of those things when you're traveling and someone in California asks where you're from, I don't tell them that I live in Villa Hills, Kentucky. I just say I'm from the Cincinnati area, and then they at least have a chance of understanding where Villa Hills might be. But anyway, you get to there. So Cynthiana is sort of a base of operations. One of the things we were able to do with our project, which we bring these photographers in and the writers, and what we're trying to do is create a document of the county. Every frame and every word that they write is put into a large file, and it is housed there. We also do selects of those pictures, and we have published in newspapers, and we also keep a file that we've exhibited in a gallery that we created. This gallery came from an abandoned storefront in Cynthiana. A gentleman came to my friend Jack Gruber, who is a photographer for USA Today and lives in Northern Virginia, the DC area. He came to Jack and told him, he said, you know, I understand that you're trying to do something here for the community that maybe the community will like and will buy into. And he said, I have this storefront. In fact, I have this whole building. I would like to sell that building to you for, well, pretty much next to nothing. That meant that we got everything that was piled 4 and 5 feet high on the left of the 1-foot walkway that ran from the street to the back of the building. So we got to move all of that stuff out. What we discovered was, as we came along, was original flooring that was savable. We saw a building that was in pretty good condition. We cleaned it out. We freshened it up. We put in new restrooms. We put in apartments in the upstairs so that we might be able to use those for people who come to visit or work as advisors to the 2 or 3 photographers and writer that are there. And so this project has now grown, and we're going into our 6th year. We just today signed on with 2 new students, one from Ohio University and the other from Southern Illinois University. And again, we think this year we have a writer on the line from Stanford, yeah, the one in California. So what we're doing is we created a gallery there. And in that gallery, well, that's kind of cool. We can hang pictures up. But then we got in touch with the Artists Guild. And the Artists Guild decided that, oh, well, maybe we could bring our collective together and exhibit some artwork. And not just paintings and photographs, but blankets, quilts, all sorts of tapestries that are done with fibers and things like that. And there's a place for that. Then, well, that's kind of nice, but you know, people come downtown and that gallery's kind of opened on the weekends. Wonder what they're doing there on Tuesday afternoons. Well, nothing until, oh, well, we want to have our Tuesday night yoga class in there because you guys have space, and it's also kind of nice. So we put in a speaker system and a ability for them to have AV or audio visual stuff for teaching or lessons, or they could watch a video of a yoga program. And now, and still this remains, and this started in the 2nd year, so we're into our 6th. For the last 4 years, the yoga group meets there on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, sometimes in the daytime, sometimes in the evening. What we have done is create a gathering spot. As soon as the schools found out there was a place to put the district art show up, bingo, here it is. These kids from the high school and middle schools and elementary schools are now exhibited in a gallery. Well, wow, that builds prestige and their pride in that it's a gallery. And we can put it up, and their mom and their dad and their grandpa and their kids across the way and that family down the street, they can all show up, and they do show up. And you know, there's refreshments in the back. I know it's small time, but it is something they did not have 6 years ago. And I think that we're very proud that we've been able to establish that piece of connectivity for the community. Now, it's not a filling station, but as Matt so aptly put, you know, it's connectivity. And at the end of the day, that's, I think, is one of paramount to you wanting to do the project and fulfilling it. So that's where we are. Yeah. Ask on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Again, a lot of times, you know, when you think of these places and spaces in Main Street USA that's rampant throughout all over the country, you know, I mean, that's a big deal to be able to help revitalize and bring these communities back to life. So I think that's great. Everybody's participating in a lot of that. So kudos to you and your hard work. So Michael, my question is a little bit more on your photojournalist side. So as a photojournalist for the Cincinnati Enquirer, how did you notice the city's landscaping change over the years? And do you feel that the Main Street vibe of Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky has changed drastically or stayed the same?
Oh, wow. Lord, I cannot remember who it was, but I remember the very first project that started in Cincinnati along the Central Parkway, when they had this wonderful sort of, I don't know, are those called boulevards when you have a space in the middle or something like that? But here we called it the Parkway. But it wasn't very park-like, so I remember the trees that got planted slowly, new and better light fixtures that maybe harken back to something more significantly designed with architecture in mind, as opposed to just yet another pole light with a bulb on the top of it. That was one of the ways. And then, of course, Smale Park. Again, civic-minded, giving money to the city to help develop that whole riverfront area down there to a point, but then I do remember that, well, it wasn't quite finished when the All-Star game, so Reds owner Bob Castellini had to reach back in that back pocket and decide that he would help finish it off too. And then there was a time in Cincinnati where there was a little bit of controversy about who was going to fund and keep those parks open. Well, we don't have money for parks because we don't have money for roads. Well, somehow they found a way. And more often than not, you do find a way. Now, as a journalist, I don't know. I always, my good friend Jim Tarbell, who some people may want to throw knives at or some people may want to applaud, I'm not sure. But, long before he was a councilman, he was an operator of a restaurant that brought people together, and he revitalized a place that was Cincinnati's oldest building that was a restaurant, and even had a ladies' entrance. And he shut that off right away, but he left the sign up, but everybody went through the same door. But just able to watch him, he, of course, was a person who was very, very concerned with preserving and preservation. And I want to say that he was not the gentrifier's friend, but I think over time, I think he did, through the persistence of the city and people and activism on the part of people, did soften his stance about that and allowed people that wanted to help start to change the face of Over the Rhine area. I'm not sure that's an unfinished project at this point, but it certainly did help bring some people downtown. But at the same time, the malls and the suburban development sprawl, that has not been a kind to the city. I think that, there's not the same vibrance that we had here at one time. But they struggle on, they succeed with many of their projects. This new convention center and that whole district over there in front of the convention center, that's something that the rest of the downtown area should aspire to.
That's great, thank you. Shauna, I have more questions I can ask, but I didn't know if there's any questions in the audience. It's hard for me to see, kind of, or if we have other questions from the online chat. I think there's.
Fondly remember driving up north with my family through the 60s and 70s and seeing and stopping at places like this. Part of what was iconic was the actual gas pumps, and the old pumps had the logos and the signage on top of each pump. What's noticeably absent here, I think with the exception of, a Shell sign in one of the photographs, was there any remnants of branding or signage in brick or concrete, or because even up as it got into the 70s, you could still drive up north and see some old gas pumps. Sometimes there were salvage yards that had the gas pumps in the back. They're probably all gone now, but was there any evidence of branding or signage?
Very little, most of it had been rusted out. I tell you that what I saw more than anything else was peeling credit card stickers, right? We take Visa, MasterCard, right?
Or back then it might have been like Bank Americard or
Sure.
MasterCharge.
Yeah. With the old, There's no swiping, right? But that's, I mean, that's part of what's gotten faster and faster, right? With self-service, so Pruitt's was the last remaining full-service gas station in Louisville. And it went out of business about a year before I started the project. So I went down there, you know, the grass was just starting to come up through. There's still some old faded signage that says full serve. You know, so it was hard to find anything kind of older than like the 70s, those old, like you're talking about the iconic gas pumps, those gravity gas pumps with the advertising on top. When I did find a gas pump, I photographed the heck out of it, but you get a sense of the last time the place was in business by the price, right? 98 cents, it's been a minute. You know, $1.50, you know, it's going on back. But yeah, I did certainly look out for those. There's a few, you know, in the slideshow in there that you can still see, mostly from the 60s, not much older than that. It's just a lot of it's been snapped up, I think, by collectors recently. You know, the American Picker Show kind of really started a renaissance of that old memorabilia.
Yeah, can I contribute here? If you're looking to find a service station on Buttermilk Pike in northern Kentucky, just off of I-75, there is a full-service station. They will put air in your tires. They will reattach your muffler if it's falling off, or they'll sell you a new one, and they'll give you a tune-up. And it's called Schwarty's, and they have gas there too. Now the pumps are a little more modern, but you don't swipe your card. You go in and you swipe your card inside of the store. It's still there, and I want to tell you what. If you want to get just a regular oil change and filter there, you need to make your appointment a couple of weeks in advance because they're very, very busy. I can't explain why. Maybe it's because service at other places is more expensive, but it is kind of seems to be caught a little bit in a time warp there. It's kind of cool. And there's always 2 or 3 people hanging around talking to.
Yeah, you know, the 2 or 3 people hanging around talking. I always looked for, at these sites, is there an old bench somewhere, you know, that had some stories to tell. And one in particular I forget where it was in the middle of Kentucky. There was a long abandoned filling station, a nice worn bench out front, and a huge cigarette sand tray with about 300 cigarettes in there. And I had fun photographing that and just thinking about the stories that were told on that bench over the years. Those are the kind of things that I like to think about in this project and connect to.
My question is for Matt. I'm assuming, and from what you said, you probably had a lot of older people that you talked to. Did you ask them, where does the community gather now that the gas station is gone?
I did not. I should have. Yeah, you know, I never did. We just got I would get so wrapped up in just the story of that place, you know, the entrepreneurial grandparents that started the place up, the tragedy that, you know, of loss in a family that necessitated a different, you know, we had to close it down for this or that, or regulations, right? Well, they mandated the new pumps. We couldn't afford the new pumps, and so we just had to give it up. Like, I couldn't get enough of those kind of stories, just understanding place, you know, and I think that helps me as a photographer maybe elicit that story out of a place. And there were some stories about, you know, there's the new Citgo. When the new Citgo came in, that's where everybody wants to go now. And some of those, the newer places, they can have a sense of in-and-out community, you know. We have a place across the street from us, the Southside Deli, that, you know, it's just a little bit of everything there. And you see neighbors in a place like that as well. So some of that still remains around. But yeah, good suggestion.
I have a question for Mike. Another area where the community congregates is the high school gymnasium. And I know that you've collected a whole large book of photographs of Indiana gymnasiums, I think, a little bit. Would you please talk about that book and tell us what you think about the role of the gym in the local community?
Well, up until Indiana football won a national football title here just a week ago, basketball was king in Indiana. But I can tell you that that basketball still remains important to almost all high schools, and it's a reason for a source of pride and all of that sort of thing. But of course, Indiana was made famous when the movie came out about Hoosiers, which was loosely modeled after a very small school won a state basketball championship against a larger school. But the gymnasiums are exactly still today a gathering spot, and it's where people come to on Friday night, and they get to see their rival just up the road play, and the families see each other, and they sit over there across the other the other team, the away teams on the other side, and they sit there and they yell at each other and cheer, and there's a collegial kind of gathering. So much so that back in the 50s through the early 70s in Anderson, Indiana, there was a very large gym there. And they always had fairly good basketball teams too, and they won their share of state championships over time. But they had season ticket holders, and I think their gym held about, if I remember right, they were like 9,000 or something like that. It was one of the 2 or 3 largest gyms in the U.S. And the only way that you could get a season ticket opportunity was when someone passed. And that if someone passed, there was a season ticket to be had. And of course, family could go to the front of the line there to make sure they could carry on those traditions. And we found my friend Chris Smith, a former instructor at Northern Kentucky University, and myself. This whole project was Chris's idea based on the fact that his father was a student manager for a high school team, and he had an old photograph, and he said, I wonder, what happened to these guys in the pictures, and he started, tracing what happened to them, and we went on this trail. We visited over 200 gymnasiums over a 6 or 7 year period, and I want to tell you that whole idea of gathering, that is a gathering spot today. Also, too, the new gathering spot, in my estimation, are the big box churches. Everybody is inviting you to come in, stop in, have a coffee, talk. Not that we want to convert you to any particular kind of belief, but it is a place where people can go. And I think people long for contact and to be able to say and talk about things that are on their mind. And I think that it's there, but you have to work a lot harder for it now.
Did we have any more questions in the audience or online? No? Okay, well then I will keep going with mine. So Catherine, my next question for you, if I can get to it. So as a long-term resident of Walnut Hills, what is one way you have seen the community rally together and support its collective memory?
Before I answer that question, I'm going to give you some history about my commitment to Walnut Hills. So I grew up in Evanston, right around on Ruth Avenue, right around the corner from Walnut Hills High School. And Walnut Hills was the place that we would come shop on the weekend. There was Louie's Meats, which was a local poultry place. There was Mr. Nate's and Miss Mary's, which is where today the nail shop is. And there was the Ebony Records. So we were doing that. And back in '97, I was in Leadership Cincinnati. And I made the commitment then that I was going to volunteer in my neighborhood, no other neighborhood. So if you were in 45206, you were eligible for me to give you your time. Or I should say, I was eligible to give you my time. And from that, so I've been on the Walnut Hills Area Council Board in 3 different decades. I have been on the board of Work Resource Center and helped with the merger to Easter Seals, which is now Easter Seals Redwood. I have been on advisory committees for Talbert House. I am a shareholder here at the Cincinnati Art Museum. I'm on a teapot in the museum upstairs. I get to sing the little song, I'm a little teapot. I have been a member of, I was on the board of our Walnut Hills Redevelopment Foundation at a time when the board was 6 figures in the hole, and there were other board members who felt the best thing for us to do was to fold the organization, and I and 3 other board members said, no way. And that organization today has brought in artworks, mortar, the well, the buildings that you see on the Kroger footstep. And I've been a member of our Walnut Hills Business Group because back in the mid-200s or 2000s, and there was development starting to come in because we had those 2-way streets, my husband looked at me and said, how come people that live in this neighborhood and look like us aren't investing in the business group? And I said, honey, we are those people that you were talking about. And we bought a commercial building right across from Fireside, not knowing what was going to be in that building. And currently my husband teaches percussion out of the studio. My fiber studio is in the building, and we are one of those spots where people come and gather, and we have a gallery space there because it's important for there to be places for community. And the other thing that I say to you young people, when you land in whatever community you land in, give back to that community. Because of that, when Artworks came into the neighborhood, because I'm in a group called Drums for Peace, we spent 10 summers doing artworks. And so Colleen said, you're going to design a mural and you're going to come on the board. Well, in addition to that, I became the co-chair of the Capital Campaign. But because of all the connections that I have in my neighborhood, when the social service agency is looking for an artist for a potential project, I can do a connection. When the health department is looking for someone to give some support, I have a connection. Because it's the connections and knowing those people who are around you in your community at the up and down and the cross that makes the vibe of your neighborhood and your community. Because it's connection. I can walk down the street, I call them the independent pharmacists. We don't have many independent pharmacists on the street corners anymore, but I know them. And I say hello to them because they're people too. And it's as you said, did you ask them where they're going now? You know, I would say to those independent pharmacists, you know you have a great skill. You just need to transform that skill. Why don't you go do this? And then to see some of them making those transitions, that they're doing other things. Or they're coming back and saying, Baba Charles, you helped me when no one else was helping me. And that means something. And it's also having that, we have what we call the trifecta in our community. So Mona, who was originally reached out to, she's the president of our Walnut Hills Area Council. And we have Samantha Miller, who's the president of our Walnut Hills Redevelopment Foundation, and I'm the president of our Walnut Hills Business Group. And the 3 of us, we may have challenging conversations, behind the scenes, but when we come out to the community, we have one unified voice because we're one community and we're a connected community, and that's the importance.
Absolutely, that's great, and it's great to, yes, thank you, absolutely. And I have to go check out that teapot now because I've never met anybody on a teapot. That's pretty great. That's a huge brag, yeah, to share that all the time.
Say that on the other side of that teapot is Bootsy Collins.
That's even better. Yeah. Well, thank you. And again, you know, everybody on our panel talking about resiliency and being able to redefine and reform and regroup, and that's really great to see these live examples of that happening in real time. So thank you, Catherine. So Matt, my next question for you, unless anybody else had a question follow-up, okay, I will let you go for it. I see a little hand raised.
How long does it take you to photograph each filling station?
How long does it take me to photograph each filling station? Well, this was asked by somebody who is often sitting in the back seat while the car is on the side of the road, and Dad jumps out and says, "I'll be right back. Hang on, you know, I got to do it. I got to do it."
Yeah,
So I think Nora might know the answer to that. It all depends, right? It depends on where it is. Some of them I felt more nervous than others, right? Like I said in the beginning, kind of trespassing on a lot of these places. I don't know who owned them. I would find them, you know, looking at Facebook groups and Google Maps, and just kind of cyber stalking communities, basically. So some of them I'd be a little bit nervous than others, thinking, yeah, I don't know about this. Others, I would take a little bit more time and try to find things through photography that I connect to. You know, take the overall shot like all of these back here, but then keep moving closer. Thinking about all the things we talked about tonight on this stage, and finding those little details that I love so much. So it might take, you know, a shoot and scoot. It might take 2 or 3 minutes, and like, well, I better get out of here. Or it might take a half hour, and where it's a beautiful day, and I just get to spend some time thinking and making pictures and remembering that I'm a photographer, which is kind of nice. How long does it take Dad when he jumps out of the car and says, "Hang on, I'll be right back"?
Like forever? Forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems about right. That seems about right.
It's fun to help you, though.
It is, I've had photo assistants, 3 photo assistants at home that have helped with some of the different pictures, and
Yes,
doesn't get any
that's
better than
great. Yeah. Was there?
I have a question. On the slim chance that people here might be concerned about photography only, can you tell us how you, the equipment, time, did you use a tripod? How were the prints made?
The technical side, I try to reduce the technical side as much as possible. So I've got a little small Fuji digital camera with a wide angle lens. I usually just leave the one lens on there. No tripod, so again, I can get in close, I can move around, I can feel the place, right? You know, you don't want to go excessive because if you take too many pictures, it takes too long to go through them in the end. So try to get there and get to the goods. And, you know, I'm pretty quick editing in Lightroom. I don't do a lot of photoshopping. There's not a lot of AI in here. There's a little bit of AI in some of these taking out my car, because sometimes there's just nowhere else to park and the car's in the shot. And I don't want my car in every picture, right? That kind of ruins the thing. Yeah, so nothing special from my end. Again, I try to, if I'm about that connection and I want to streamline as much, I don't want to hold a tripod and juggle a huge camera bag with 8 lenses and everything. I'm pretty slim. On this project, I inherited my grandpa's old leather camera bag, a little small thing like this. And so I got to take Grandpa with me on the journey, which, you know, we're talking about connection up here. There's another connection that I just really love. Yeah.
It's great work. Great work.
Thank you, Mark.
So my question for you, Matt, is with the trajectory of obsolescence of many filling stations and the saying that everything old is new again, do you think there's ever a possibility for a resurgence of these types of mom and pop places to sprout back up in all parts of the United States? Or do you think they might just be gone to history's memory?
I think I'll tell you, I'm encouraged tonight, like I hope those here and watching are, with the great work that's going on either side of me here. That connection that we all want, you know, as one place of connection maybe goes belly up, others open up, because I really do think that we crave it. We want it. We want to come together. We want to have those difficult conversations. We want to see people that see the world in a different way than we do. That's what I love about photography. It's just little windows into everybody's world, how we see the world. One place in particular, I knew I was going to forget where it was, and I have, but it's an old, beautiful architecture with an old filling station that they had put in electric chargers. I thought that was pretty clever. They got some, you know, some fast chargers in. But that's another thing that is the demise of some of these kind of filling stations. We have one car that never goes to the filling station now. We just plug it in the wall at home, right? And so there's another way that these places are kind of being lost. But I think there's always entrepreneurs, there's always people that care about community, that work toward it, that want to see it happen for themselves and for the next generations. And I'm so encouraged tonight by the conversation up here.
A couple of thoughts. There in Covington, there's a restaurant called The Standard that's in an old gas station. So I think there are other gas stations around this area that have that. And I'm going to give a different viewpoint of the current gas stations and what the current gas stations look like. And they still are third places. Like there is a gas station that I rarely go to, but every time I go in there, the people behind the counter know someone who's on the other side of that screen, and they're having a conversation. And even though when we think of large corporations own gas stations, here in the community of Cincinnati, there still are local owned gas stations. Like a family may own 3 or 4. I know in the African American community, there's a gentleman by the name of J. Raj, who, if you go north, he owns 2 BP gas stations, and there are people that go support them because they want to keep the dollars local. So they're not those mom and pop size gas stations in these buildings, but they are around. I think when I first heard of this, on Woodburn Avenue, there was a mom and pop gas station. Guess what's there now?
Buc-ee's.
$500,000 condo townhomes.
Just leave it at that, right? Yeah. But that is true. You know, when you do think still of gathering spaces and places, like how many times have we all gone to a gas station? It is totally crowded, and there are people having conversations, not necessarily in the same way that we think of it nostalgically, but yeah, it's definitely still a gathering place of sorts. Did anybody have any other questions before I jump in? Yep, I see.
For Catherine, when you talk about how you changed the whole one-way street thing, which I think is fascinating and never thought about that. Do you think that the work that you did could be a template for other cities that have similar situations, or do you think it's a very unique thing?
I don't think it's unique. I think it can be replicated, but it's commitment and it's tenacity. It is not being wavered by the no's that you receive. And it doesn't have to be one-way streets. It could be ensuring that as development is coming to your community, that you want to make sure that you know what the AMI, affordable monthly income, is for your area, and that you are looking at, well, if I look at the census tracts, do we have housing that's affordable for everyone is here? Or it could be, do I want to make sure that there's green space? And if I want to make sure there's green space in my neighborhood, am I going to be willing to go get my hands dirty in the dirt to make sure that this space is here? But I do believe that there is enough that we can continue to make changes in our community, because our community are made up of the people who live there. And if the people who live in the community stand up passionately, eloquently, frustratingly, and talk about what you want in your community, what you see that your neighbors are desiring in their community, it can be done.
Time for one more question.
Quickly.
Question for Matt. Photography is all about light. When you did for your photos, did you plan this ahead, what the weather was, so you're not going out at summer at noon, so you do this more in the evening hours, or when the weather is more cloudy? How did you do that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all about the light, right? You go out on a cloudy day, the place can look a lot different than if you go out when the sun's coming down and the angels are singing in that light, you know? With a project like this, the one I did before this was the birthplaces of every U.S. president. I got out when I could get out, right? And I like that challenge as a photographer, right? I would have them mapped out. I might take a 2-day trip and map out 20 that I had found online, and I always found more, every time I found more. But I knew, okay, I got about, a half hour to stop at this place because I want to get 6 more places before I get to the barbecue joint that was recommended to me that night for dinner, right? So you got to do what you got to do, right? If it's cloudy, crap. If it's worse, if the sun's behind and it's all backlit, oh crap. Okay, what am I going to do here? I like that challenge as a photographer, right? You got to dig deep. You got to know your equipment. You've got to make it happen, and I dig that. Like that charges me up. A couple of them were there was one in Bethlehem, Kentucky, that it still had the gas pumps. Someone was asking. It still had the old gas pumps, probably from the early 60s. I forget what number was left on them. And it had a sign, a Coca-Cola sign that just said gas. And I had gotten in touch with the family that owned it. Their grandparents had started it. And they sent me some pictures from the 50s when it was in its heyday. It was amazing. And it's just beautiful. It's right on the side of this lonely stretch of road in this tiny little community. The architecture was amazing, everything about it. The first time I went there, cloudy, nasty, light day. And, I made some things happen. I tried hard. I was on my belly, shooting up, and just trying all kind of different things. I was on the way back from another trip, and I said, ooh, wait, the Bethlehem's right over there. So I got off the freeway and went over. Man, right when the sun was coming down, and that beautiful light, one of the prints of that is in there. It's my favorite, probably my favorite print from the series. The light was perfect. People probably thought, passing by, I was crazy because I was like, oh yeah, that's it. Oh my God, it's so great, it's great. And it was just an amazing, that light described everything just so well. That age came right through. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you all for such a fruitful discussion and everybody for asking all kinds of great questions. And let's give a round of applause for all of our folks tonight. And I'll turn it over to Shauna.
We'll have a few moments if you want to come up and talk with our panelists. And of course, you can see Matt's work out in the area in the back. The museum does close at 8. So just as you are monitoring your time, and if you need to walk out to the front door, that you plan accordingly. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. If you are interested in our next 6 at 6 lecture, it is on March 4th, and it is on healthcare in Northern Kentucky, and we'd love to see you back. Thank you.